You know, Cage is a big deal when there's already 3,000 people on the live. It's like they're gonna watch Drake and Ken Golden rip.
Flawless.
MT, flawless. Uh-oh.
First one on.
Punctual.
I like it. Hello everyone, we are ready to start another Hobby Night School. Tonight we have a very distinguished guest we're super excited to have. CageLawyer is joining us tonight. We're going to discuss evolution in the hobby. Drake. And we are really excited to have him on. He is somebody who has inspired us, and it's been super cool because we've been fans of his podcast. Super fans for a really long time. So to watch, from where Luca's sort of started to where it's at now, it's really exciting to see that progression, and I look forward to hearing his thoughts about it. Thanks, isn't it cool? I literally just got it. I felt like it suited me. Jeremy always gets compliments on his hat, so.
So why don't you invite Mr. CageLawyer in?
Absolutely, I'm just waiting for him to ask to join us.
Please join us, Mr. Cage. Grace us with your presence. What's up, 504 Trees? Jordan, what's going on, y'all?
It sounds like Manny doesn't like your hat.
Manny, he's a piece of garbage.
I'm here to
Follow the eye. What's going on? Cousin Oz, Cousin Tony. Just waiting on Mr. Cage to join us.
So, I think Tony runs the Cousins Collectibles and Oz has his own.
Hey, there it is.
So I always know who I'm talking to. Oops. Oh, shit, you can invite people?
Yep.
I know for them. See, there's Oz.
Follow the eye. That's Oz. That's my guy. Oh, look at the hats! My guy. Don't think we came empty-handed. I accidentally threw away the Chick-fil-A bag. Otherwise, we're here rocking with you, brother.
There we go. What's up, guys?
Let's go.
I got to be honest. Like, when we couldn't land Goldberg and we got you as a consolation prize, not a bad consolation prize.
This is it, man. I was hoping, I get to talk to Manny too. So I mean, we all feel let down tonight.
I know.
So I don't know how we can give you an intro that would truly satisfy and justify like what kind of impact you've had on us in the hobby. And one thing before we get into the intro and we kiss your ass too much, you make the hobby. The ability to talk about serious topics and still keep it light and have fun with it and not take yourself too serious makes it refreshing, because as people who do this truly as a form of, as Chris Hodge would say, escapism, something for fun, some days it sucks. And so I've listened to you for well over probably 1,000 hours.
Wow.
We're fortunate enough to, spend time together at National. And if it wasn't for people like you who truly make it fun, we might not be doing some of the stuff that we're doing.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the hell to say to that other than thank you. And it's not really deserved. But trust me, I appreciate that. I really do. We have, we're lucky for folks like you. And I'm lucky, believe it or not, that I have Andrew, because he makes it very easy for me to be an idiot. I mean, you and Manny have a great, rapport back and forth. I feel actually, I watch a lot of content where it's just one person and they kind of just, they're off on their own doing their thing. I get to make fun of Andrew and, go to the normal, hey, you're a stoner for this one kind of, stuff and, keep it light. So, yeah, man, look, I appreciate that. And, I really do.
One thing that we've taken from listening to your guys' pod was not necessarily plays, but the way that you look at it. And so for me, I would have never known years ago that buying and selling cards, that there was more to it. Mm-hmm. And now, like, I've taken my construction background in the way that, I look at numbers with project managers, and there's a lot of parallels that run. And then I listen to you guys when I'm commuting, and I'm like, man, that's an interesting way. I'm going to try it and see what works for us. And so the whole genesis of Hobby Night School was, we're fortunate that we've got a little bit of disposable income where we can afford to try some things that might seem outlandish, make some mistakes, but ultimately share it with people and say, hey, learn from us. We don't take ourselves serious. Like, guess what? spending $5,000 on Kobe White. It hasn't quite worked out just yet.
That's all right. Patrick Williams will.
This was the thought process. Now do with it what you will. And so I would applaud you guys because you guys are very transparent in the thought process and like how you ultimately landed on whatever it is that you're doing within the hobby.
Yeah, I agree. And Jeremy's been talking for about 45 minutes. So what I wanted to do, I'm kidding. He's actually like, he's spot on. I said this when I was on your guys' podcast about like the day he came up and he was like, oh, you got to listen to this podcast. These guys are hilarious. I love them. And we've been, I think that was like, you guys were maybe like 15 episodes in at that point, and we have been listening ever since. Wow. So
she's lying because I came up and I'm like, at first I thought this New York guy was an asshole.
Oh yeah.
Well, I am.
No, I was like, he is the typical abrasive New York person. The hell with that city. And then, we listened, and then, now you're just growing on us.
It's so funny because there's this song that he listens to. It's like Don't Tap on the Glass, and he had to listen to it like a dozen times before he decided if he liked it. And I think he only listened to Lucas like 4 times, and he's like, no, I like him after all.
I mean, listen, we appreciate that 100%. You know that. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. We'll get into it, obviously, but it's crazy where we've come. It really is. I would never have believed it. And the funniest thing is that we've come significantly further than I ever thought we would, but we've only gone about 5% of what Andrew promised we would do when we first started out. He's like,
high expectations.
Man,
I talked to him at the National, and he's just like, I'm like, you guys, you're so proud. You should be so proud. And he's like, I'm not happy yet. I'm like,
yeah.
I love the single-mindedness of that.
He listened to Kobe's, job's not finished just one time too many.
One time. If you would have listened to it one less.
We'd be all right.
Jeremy, why is Cage smiling? We've got work to do. There's so much more green space. I don't understand why he's smiling. I'm gonna go get to work.
He should be mad.
He's like, yeah. He's like, we have so much to do. Like, why are you taking a break? Why are you eating? Why we have so many things
we don't sleep. We just podcast. So let's talk a little bit about your journey as a collector, how you started, and what your favorite card or collectible that you currently have is. Let's start from the beginning and get all the way to where you're at now.
Sure. So I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I'm a Yankee fan now, which sounds like front running and sounds like ridiculousness. And I think Aaron Judge is about to get up. Right? He's up next. He's on deck, so we'll see if he hits a home run. But in 1986. Being a Yankee fan in New York was really hard. The Mets were everybody was chasing. That was Dwight Gooden. That was the amazing Mets of '86. They won the World Series. It was Dwight and Darryl Strawberry and Keith Hernandez and just this amazing team. And the Yankees. I mean, we had the dude with the mustache. We had Don Mattingly, and we were like nobody else. And we were terrible.
It was a good mustache.
Yeah, it was a good mustache, but it was not. I was like the only Yankee fan, which is funny because everyone's a Yankee fan now, and there's not many Met fans. At least people are coming back on the bandwagon now that they're good again. But in the 80s, I played Pee Wee football. I played all kinds of sports myself, and I remember I got hurt as a kid playing football, and back at the time, I wasn't, the recovery wasn't as great. There was no Zoom and no nothing. So I was actually out of school for a while, like home instruction on crutches and like the whole deal. I have like metal spikes holding my hip together. And one of my aunts bought me a top set, 86 top set. And it was, like a hand collated, not a factory set. They must have bought it at like a flea market for $5. And back at the time when you did that, like hand collated sets, they were like completely out of order. It was just like lumped in a box. It was like 792 cars, just all out of order. So I basically, Judge didn't hit a home run. Ian's giving me the updates. So I couldn't go anywhere. I was like, I was bedridden basically, and I was taking the cards out, splitting them up by team, then trying to put them in numerical order, looking at the stats on the back of them, and that was the start of it. That was the start of cards. And then we started trading cards on the block. It's funny, if I could go back in a time machine and kind of show you guys like a visual. You ever seen one of those, I guess they're plastic milk crates that people sit on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have holes in the side of them and stuff like that, right? That's how I kept my cards as a kid. So I had the sets, but like if I was buying cards in packs, I could go to the store and buy 87 Topps pack with the wood border around it. And I'd take the cards and I would throw them in a milk crate, like not even sleeves or plastic.
It's illegal to have those.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you can't sit on them and stuff
You
like
know
that.
you're not
Yeah, you
allowed
can't.
to, that's stealing.
I
My
know.
uncle was a milk truck driver, and he was like, he'd keep them, and he's like, it's like super illegal to keep
Yeah, that's what I had. I had a green one from I forget what dairy, and I threw my cards in there. I'll never forget. It was probably 2 or 3 years later when cards started getting like bigger, and there were kids with more money on the block, and we would like trade cards on the street. Instead of flipping them or putting it on our bicycle. I'm not that old. But people would actually start trading cards, and I remember dragging out my milk carton, and one of the kids, Fat Rob, said to me, he's like, I don't want to trade with you. And I'm like, why? I got good cards. Like Paul Molitor's in the middle of a hit streak. I got his 87 tops, Hey, now, this is his 13th year tops card. Hey, don't you want my Paul Molitor? He says, no, we take care of our cards. Like, look at my cards. They're in a binder. Yours are in a milk crate. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I got to start taking care of these cards. That was my first grading. That was my first interaction with a grader. Fat Rob, obviously, he was an amateur grader before PSA was out there. He was looking at my cards and saying, these things are going to be a 2. I can't trade with you. I don't want your Paul Molitor. But so I guess that kind of started it. I'll tell you, I was 12 years old when the first hobby bubble boom started. 88, 89, Griffey Jr., and that was all she wrote. Bo Jackson was around. I was a Raider fan because my Pee Wee football team was the Tuminello's Deli. That was in Staten Island. Tuminello. A few Italian people there. Tuminello's Deli Raiders. Every team was based on like an NFL team. It was a local shop, and you got an NFL team. And so that's how I became a Raider fan. Bo Jackson, we loved Ken Griffey. Every kid loved Ken Griffey. Didn't matter, who you were. And 80, 89, just everything. Upper Deck came out. You had all these releases that just came out of nowhere. And then the early 90s was just premium cards, Finest in 93, a baseball card store in every corner. A lot of parallels to what we're seeing today with the cards. And the difference between sort of like 2016 through 2022, kind of like what I saw from 88 to 94. Very similar.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I think the origin story is important because anybody that's followed the pod would know, I don't think at any point in time, if you were to rewind prior to COVID, that anybody expected, or you would expect, to go on from doing a podcast to a Whatnot stream to being main stage at every major hobby event to somebody that everybody in the hobby looks up to. And so, how does that feel? Because I heard Cage at the beginning of Lucas. I hear Cage now. And there's no way in hell that you ever expected to go on the ride that you're on now. You often joke about not even knowing what a podcast was, or
I didn't.
not knowing Instagram or anything like that.
Well,
Back to Fat Rob, wondering now you'd be teaching him a thing or two.
I'm gonna look. I fought Fat Rob. It wasn't too long after that whole milk crate thing that me and Fat Rob got into a thing, and I beat him up. And he came. He went and run in his house. He came out with a little mini bat. And I'm like, what? We bringing weapons? I got weapons too. What?
I'm gonna bring a whole bat.
You're 12 and I'm 13. I'll kick your ass. So anyway,
you have to. You have to show who's
that's
daddy.
It. That's it. Fat Rob. I have to look Fat Rob up, see if he's still alive, and go kick his ass. But anyway, no, it's funny because I know it's partly tongue in cheek what you're saying. I have 2,000 and change followers on Instagram. I am literally a nobody. You guys have more followers than me. And I think part of that is I'm not trying to farm followers. And believe it or not, it sort of gets us in trouble a little bit. We have meetings with sponsors and, they ask for our numbers and they ask for our this and they ask for our that. And they all say, wow, you have such a loyal following and everybody loves you guys. But, you only have this many followers. And I'm like, well, I could get a bot. I could buy followers just like the next guy. But first of all, I don't even know how to do that. And, a bot is like what I put in the pool. It helps vacuum it, I don't know what the hell that even means. It sounded cool. But, I'm on the stage because I'm not afraid to talk in front of people. A lot of people are. Influencer, we've come so far. Sure, you're right. There's no way I would have envisioned the success that we've had a couple years ago when Andrew was like, yeah, let's do a podcast. That it definitely is ridiculously, further than I ever thought it would be. But I hope that if you listen to me now and you listened to me back episode 1, 3, whatever, that I'm still saying the same shit. Like, I'm still the same, like, message, the same stuff. 90% hobby positivity, 10%, pump the brakes on the crazy, ultra modern lunacy. I think I've been saying that, since the get-go. Sprinkled in with some weird stuff along the way. I appreciate that, Bold Headbangers. I will tell you, and I mean, I don't know if you get the question in here or whatever. You sent me a list of questions, and I wrote back like too long, didn't read. I really
I feel like I didn't read any of
I
those.
didn't really. I don't. But I'll tell you, my favorite thing about the podcast is the opportunities that come with it, and opportunities for learning. Right? Like I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 in 2 weeks. Or I'm an old man, but I've learned more in the last 2 years and change than I did probably in the 2 decades before that. Because you're just opening your world up to other things, right? You're opening your mind up. You're constantly learning, researching football games and players, and thanks, Octane, Dick. So I mean, but more importantly, when you're in the game, which is what we all are, you're in the game. People use the word deal flow, right? There are opportunities that come up. Say what you want about Top Shot. Like, I would never even know what that is today if not for the podcast and the audience and somebody asking me a question about it, rolling that into, talking about Bitcoin with Bro Namath, and then, trading Ethereum and minting NFTs and doing it's been like a constant steady roll from one thing to the next. And, the NFT, say what you want about it, but like, I got my kids involved in that, and like, my daughter designed it, did the art. I mean, like, it's been an amazing kind of ride, all because you put yourself out there and you start talking about something you love anyway. So I will say this, you could say what you want about like popularity or that people know me or whatever it is. Whatever I've done for the hobby or whatever my role is, I have to say thank you more to everybody else out there, because it's been an amazing ride for me. Like, I owe you guys way more, because this has been a lot of fun.
Do you think it's weird that you, like, where you're at now, that you can like legitimately monetize your opinions and your thoughts, and that is something that is like people care enough to pay you because they want to be part of your brand?
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty amazing. Is it surprising? Sure, but I'll tell you, it's no different than one of the things I've learned is that there's a different way of doing things than what I was taught, right? And I know you guys are doing a good job of teaching your kids this, and we see it live with your content, and I'm trying to do it with my own. But my father died at 55 and had the same job his entire life and never made, a lot of money, and died owing the IRS. And my mother was a union school teacher, in the teachers union. She was a school secretary for her whole career until she retired. And never, she lives in someone's basement. You know what I mean? Like, the house that I don't want to say own, the house that Citibank owns that I have a mortgage on is the first time I've ever lived in a house that all 4 walls are my own. I always lived in attached or, project type housing. Like, I don't come from much. So,
and you're only a few years away from owning that bad boy.
Yeah,
we dropped that little nugget. Just
couple
a couple more years, man.
Couple more years, but things change. I mean, I got electrical problems in my yard now. I got all kinds of stuff. That just when
you're
you think,
singing to the choir on that one,
it's
sir.
funny, man.
Something new.
Somebody once told me, I'd like to teach Andrew great sayings. Right? His favorite one now is, "By the yard, life is hard, but by the inch, life's a cinch." So I taught him that one, and he keeps saying it. But how about this one? Just when I think I can make ends meet, somebody moves the ends. That's my new saying. That's my new one in life. It's always the case.
There's always a new goalpost, sir.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess just to hammer home the point on why it's not that surprising, it's my parents, who did old school, basically taught me the way of living life is go get an education, and in order to do that, you put yourself in debt, and then once you have that debt manageable, not gone but manageable, you buy a house and put yourself in even more debt. And at some point in time, if you've educated yourself with that debt and the mortgage, you get a job that maybe pays you a little bit more, and you strive to be middle management one day, and hopefully you get to retire without too much debt. And, you don't outlive whatever you've saved in a savings account at 0.0003%, So what's amazing is the podcast and my exposure to the lunatic who I'm partnered with, has shown me that there are other ways to make money. Watching my kids watch YouTube and these people, making money, putting out content, being paid to do it, it's a real eye-opening thing. So I'm not surprised about it, especially because, listen, one of the greatest things that we did was somehow, some way, we have this community that is, it's amazing. It's completely organic. We've never paid $1 for like an advertisement anywhere. And more importantly, we've never charged $1 to anyone for anything. Sure, people have bought NFTs, completely voluntary. Some people buy it, say, I don't even know what this is, but we're doing it to support you. That's amazing. We love that. And people have definitely done that. But that community is literally everything. When people are paying us, it's not because I speak so well or I have this great opinion. It's because they know that they are partnering with not just me and Andrew, but all the lunatics like Colorado here who has a tiger as his PFP.
So I know you just recently started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I did.
You said you were going to.
Yesterday.
Are you seeing the parallels with what your parents taught and the Poor Dad in Mr. Kiyosaki's great book?
100%. And last Thursday, it's amazing. I read this chapter about, how the wrong way to do it is, basically getting paid. And then as soon as you get the paycheck, you're writing your bills and you're paying all your bills, and then you have nothing left over. And I read that chapter. I went into my office. It was payday last Thursday. I pulled out my checkbook. I wrote all my bills out, and I wound up spending more money than I even got paid that day. And I'm like, it hit me at like a lunchtime. I was like, I am living this. The problem, of course, though, Jeremy, is what the hell are you supposed to do at this point in time, right? He's telling you this great story. That's great if I got my DeLorean working up to 1.21 gigawatts and I could go back to when I was 18 and not go to college and instead start buying houses and flipping them and turning them around. I will give you guys credit for one thing. You can say, oh, you learned this, you learned things from me, the whole deal. And people in the chat and listening to this or replaying it or wherever it is, there is something you can't teach that you guys have. You either have it or you don't. And for the most part, I didn't have it, and that's the difference. It's hustle, right? This hobby, you need it. If you want to be successful in it, like I got to hang out with you guys at the National, and then you disappeared for a day. And I'm like, oh, maybe they went to spa day for themselves. Like they did a couple spa at one of the Chicago hotels, or, maybe they were off doing autographs or whatever. No, you drove to like Wisconsin and bought someone's collection filled with like Currys and Kobe's and all this stuff. Like that is either you have it or you don't, and you guys do, and you enjoy doing it. And so that's what I take from you guys, and that the people who I've seen succeed in the hobby, they have that hustle. Andrew has that hustle. Sometimes he's hustling in circles, and I have to stop him. And be like,
what are you doing?
But he is moving.
So you can't say hustle because you are a devoted husband and father. You work a job that requires, and I don't want to speak on your personal life, but it requires some serious travel sometimes.
Yep.
You record a daily episode. Andrew's got you running whatnot. You know what I mean? And so, we've got 4 kids. I work a full-time job. Courtney makes sure that our house is in working order. Sometimes this is real damn hard work. Sometimes it's inconvenient. Sometimes a kid gets sick. Sometimes you want to go on a family vacation.
Yep.
So for you to say that you don't hustle, I wholeheartedly disagree. You're just being modest.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
There's different hustles.
Everybody, but touching on what you were talking about, I feel like something that just in general, I like that we have included our children in this, and I see you bringing your kids into it, and that's something like the lessons that our kids are learning from going to shows and watching us negotiate and have conversations with people and network and build these relationships are things that are going to carry on with them for the rest of their lives. These are like actual life skills that will benefit them forever, and it's something that they're learning to do in a super fun way that feels like it's just fun, but they're actually, I watch my kids negotiate deals at our table for cards. My daughter doesn't even know who the player is. She sees the price on it. She's like, okay, well, this is the price. And they're like, well, can you do this much? And she like calculates in her head. She's like, I can take this much off because she knows 15%. That's what mom said. This is where we're at. And she will. And that's when the little boys negotiate with her. Usually they just pay her whatever she asks
You got the secret. You got the secret sauce. I mean, listen, I don't know if you guys did as kids, but I mean, in the 90s, I used to have tables at local shows with my father. You know, he was, you know, not the healthiest person on earth. We'd let him sit behind there with a cane, and, you know, I would buy stuff for him to open. He was a total degenerate. He was a gambling fool. You know, like, we lived in Staten Island. He used to be in Atlantic City, you know, a couple times a month. So he loved the ripping. I mean, if there were breakers at the time, forget it. You know, Donald Trump would have got Leslie's money and the breakers would have. Yeah. So this, but that's part of it, though. You know, we have, you know, like we're all kind of gamblers at heart, right? So you know, I used to set up at shows, and I would sell my stuff and sell my cards, and he would open with whatever money I would sell my cards for. He would open, and every once in a while we'd get lucky. He'd put something, and I'm like, okay, give me that, and I'd sell it, you know, and then I'd buy more wax, and he'd open. It was a vicious cycle. But I've been doing this for a long damn time. I mean, I remember when I was in college, I bought a showcase, like a nice fancy showcase, and I would go to, I love opening Pokemon too, Manny. Open a couple of ETBs with Ian today. I take a showcase in the summer and set up on Broadway, right by the Bull. Like, you guys have seen it, you know, the Wall Street Bull, right on the corner of Maiden Lane and Broadway, you know, near Wall Street. And set up there, and there were guys, this was before Zuccotti Park got, you know, like sit-ins and problems with the police and stuff. It was right there. And you'd set up there without a permit, and guys were selling wax. And I would buy, you know, packs, or I would bring in stuff from the show, and I would set up a showcase right there. And at like 11:45, the stockbrokers would come out in the 90s, and they would buy my Michael Jordan cards. And they'd buy the singles, and they'd open packs, and they'd buy stuff from me. And every year, the summer of, you know, college, I would do that. And the last week, I would sell everything that I had and my showcase, usually to one of the dealers there, and I would have spending cash for college. Like, I've been doing the card thing for a long time.
So crazy for you to say that you don't hustle when you were doing that.
Yeah, but I was a kid then. You know, I mean, now I can't hustle. I'm too fat.
So Amelia works with Jeremy, and we have made her, at 15, she's got a Roth IRA started, because I'm like, you just need to, like, diversify yourself. She's actually investing in her own card. She's got her own eBay now. So I just think these kinds of things, like, set up young, and the more that we engage, and I think social media and your podcast, this is why, like, these things are so important, because when you guys are out there and you have Andrew being like, you know, the young one, and like, it, you know, he engages with like the younger generation of like collectors. These kids are learning from you guys, and they're learning to hustle, and we're teaching them the stuff that maybe our parents never taught us.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think you're right. My daughter has like a YouTube channel. You know what I mean? She like puts like art on there and stuff. And, you know, my son, he goes to card shows. He loves trade nights. He loves making deals. You know, he loves buying and selling. And, you know, it's just something that it's amazing that you learn at like 7, 8, 9 years old. You know, he also, I'm starting to now, because, you know, I want it to be fun. So you kind of like got to balance it, right? But I do want him to know, you know, what things cost, because it's fun to rip. But I want him to know, okay, you know, look what we did here. This ETB was $50, right? You know, and you just got this card. What we're going to do with this one here now is we're going to send it to SGC. It's going to cost us $25 to grade it. So now we're into it for $75. And let's see what it comes back and see, you know, so like it's now become fun, and I still want to keep the fun, but I also want to make sure he sees the process and all, you know, the other fun stuff that, you know, that we're doing. So
he should have bought a tiger and then submitted 3 cards for free through you for grading. Just saying.
I mean, listen, if he mints a tiger, he's going to get the Ian Pulls Fire one. He'll be the first one to get it. He asks me all the time.
But do you think that like mentality of you like explaining, you know, where the money comes from and where it's going, and like the pipeline of it comes from, like, Jeremy and I both came up from like humble, you know, upbringings as well, and our children are definitely not living that lifestyle that we lived. They are living a much more
life of privilege
life. And so to me, it's really important that they understand the value, because they get what they want. You know, they're like, oh, I need my daughter, I need a new bathing suit. It's you know, it's $300.
Yeah.
And she gets it. But the thing is you have to, like, when you're living a life like our children, like, we've worked hard to give our children like you know, everything that they could want. but then there's that balance, you know, and I think the hobby is a good like, you know, litmus test for that. It's like, how are you, you know, do you understand this? And this isn't like this conversation wasn't what I was expecting it to be.
No, I get
it's
you.
important, you know, it's like.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, listen, college is going to be the grinder. I mean, you're not the grinder you use, Jeremy, but college is going to be the grinder. So it's
guy knows what a guy wants, son.
So I mean, listen, it's going to be interesting, right? I don't know what your plan is, but I do have a plan. I mean, my kids' college will be taken care of, but they won't know it because, you know, I don't know if you remember. I mean, I went away to school, and there were two types of kids in school: the ones whose parents were paying, the ones who were taking student loans. And the ones who were taking student loans out and knew how much it cost and knew what it was going to be and how much they were going to be paying interest, they actually showed up for Astronomy 101 Monday morning after a long weekend or Friday morning after the Thursday night after hours. And the kids whose parents were paying, they were the ones who took an extra semester to graduate or were in their third school after transferring from two, because they were doing it with, you know, a safety net. They were doing it, you know, you didn't have to walk the high wire, but when you're doing that high wire without a net underneath, all of a sudden you pay more attention and you kind of know to earn it now. Now, again, when they graduate, I'm sure they'll be taken care of, but I don't want them knowing that. I want them to go through it. And you can bring that out, you know, not just college, any other thing in life. You can still take care of your kids, but teach them, you know, you got to earn it yourself.
This is the damn guy who said he didn't grind and doesn't hustle, but he was selling Beanie Babies to put himself through college like we weren't paying attention.
Yeah, in law school, I used to go to Noodle Cadoodle Tuesday mornings before class. I used to stand online and buy Beanie Babies when they got their delivery, and I would sit there waiting for class to start and list them on eBay. And I would get money orders mailed to me. Money orders and personal checks.
I still got eBay back then. I went to the Hallmark store next to the salon that I worked at, and I would buy the Beanie Babies the day that they were, you know, the one in the square. Yeah. So
funny I suppose it's not like hustling or grinding if you truly love what you're doing.
Who loves collecting Beanie Babies? But I'll tell you a very funny story with the Beanie Babies is those things crashed so fast that I had a ton of them that I couldn't sell for anything. Disney ones and, you know, the Thai Beanie, like the legitimate ones. But, you know, I always believe, first of all, I have like hoarding tendencies. We all kind of do, right? So either gambling, hoarding, or a little bit of both. That's kind of the way the hobby works, right? But I remember that I kept like hundreds of these things and I put them in like a dresser. You know what I mean? Like one that I wasn't using, like almost use it as storage instead of like big plastic containers, like a dresser. And I'll never forget, I took the dresser with me when I bought this house, and my wife goes down to the basement and she starts opening these. She had no clue. She's opening these drawers and it's just Beanie Babies and Beanie Babies. She's like, "What the hell is wrong with you?
She thought she was in a horror movie.
Why do we have
She's like, you were not the man that I thought I married.
What is going on? Like, where did these things come from? It was just like, you know, just millions of these ridiculous things. Yeah, I have several Princess Diana bears, Hail Mary SC. Different versions of them too. The original ones came with a different tag. They use different kind of pellets. The PVC sells for more than the PE ones. I remember this from the 90s. But yeah, I got all kinds of shit.
I wonder with the Queen passing if like the Diana bears are now like a thing. They might
maybe. Who knows? Who the hell knows? I mean, it just goes to show you, right? Like anything can become popular. And no bullshit. Like I remember going to a Parsippany, New Jersey Tuesday night show. It was a huge card show, just cards. And then for a while, every table was Beanie Babies. The same dealers were not bringing their cards. They were just bringing, you know, they were doing the same thing. They were going to Hallmark and buying the sealed bags of dozens of these things. And then they were marked on the table, you know. Oodles the poodles and, you know, Pinchers the lobster is $15 a piece. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? But yeah,
I was told that Furbies are making a comeback. I was at a photo shoot the other day talking about how I sell sports cards because I can't not talk about how I sell sports cards even when I'm doing nothing that's regarding cards at all. I'm just like, it's like word vomit. But they were talking about how all of a sudden, like all the Furbies, like anyone who had Furbies are like now selling them in the nostalgia and they're worth like a ton of money. I'm like, well, my mom threw mine away because they were annoying. So
that's why it's worth money, by the way. It's worth money because your mom threw it away.
Yeah.
Right? If moms didn't throw things away, they wouldn't be worth money. You know, and that's the reason why, to bring it back to cards, ultimately your Jaws and your Zions won't be worth money. They had to come up with this grading thing to create sort of like an artificial scarcity. Right?
Oh, yeah, because everybody takes care of their cards now, or at least the people that were buying during the pandemic. So when you have, you know, 36,000 graded Ja Morant base cards, like those aren't worth anything. And I don't know, like I have this conversation all the time with people, especially on TikTok, because there's like so many young people on TikTok that like just got into collecting during the pandemic. And they are like, oh, it's people like you, Courtney, specifically me. I ruined the base card market by being like, hey, when there's 100,000 of these, they're not all that valuable. And they're like, no, they're only not valuable because you said so. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny. People talk about, oh, it's the junk era again. Is it the junk era again? And no one really dives deep enough into why the junk era happened. And I remember living through it. And the reason the junk era happened the first time around was because all of a sudden, when people got into cards again, the older stuff started really peaking in value. And everybody was chasing the Mickey Mantles, and everybody was chasing the older cards because they were thrown out, because they weren't collected in the 50s and the 60s in the same way. But then in the 80s, everybody thought that their Mark McGuire was going to be valuable like the Mickey Mantle. So they took care of it. They didn't let their mom throw it out when they moved. And all of a sudden, you had something that was being collected for like an investment purpose, right? And it was on Home Shopping Club, and it was like, buy these McGuire cards and blah, blah, blah. Once you get to that, it's very difficult for it to actually, hold value, increase value, you name it. When everybody thinks it's going to be worth something over time and everybody's keeping it, there's too much supply. And it's sort of the same thing that's happening now. And that's why we said it's sort of like a run or a race towards the lower pop, / high grade type stuff. This is like the new creation this time around.
So what do you think is next? You've been through several cycles. You were a 12-year-old with milk crates, not taking care of your cards. Fat Rob had to check you, then you whipped his ass being the alpha male that you are.
Yeah.
Slang babies,
Yeah.
Now you're a little bit in the spotlight. The evolution of your collection, I think, is kind of cool because you moved into some Duncan, you're getting some LeBron, which I think all sound minds would agree. I think LeBron becomes a very good place to, let's just use store money.
Yeah.
What do you think is a fair expectation that we'll see in the hobby and for like the content that's coming out of it? And some of it is a result of what you're doing, because if it wasn't for you guys, I would have never met Manny. I think Double Coverage is on here, and there's several other people who will point to you and Andrew as the reason why they're doing more in this space as opposed to just quietly buying and selling cards.
Yeah. I mean, and Hail Mary, I do need a Will Ferrell auto. I got a cool semi-pro card of his. They actually made a semi-pro card of his. I was giving them out at the National. They were in my gift box.
I know, I have them. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Along with Prism Mookie Betts.
Yeah, that was the other National. But I was giving away
low-key cards.
Those were a buck. So what do I think is going to happen with the hobby? What do I think is going to happen with hobby content? What's funny is hobby content's kind of going through a little bit of an interesting period, because you really have two kinds now. Right, you have an educational / optimistic / overall hobby kind of thing, right? Your Slab Stocks talking about like data, and your Cardboard Chronicles talking about collecting and investing and what the difference is and the whole deal. And you have that type of stuff. You have talk like me and Andrew, and you have like you guys, the Thick Boys, and which is hilarious, by the way. I hope everyone who's watching or watches this later listens to that stuff. We got to get Manny a little better with the sour stuff, the hot stuff is sour. It's very weird that he can't do it. But the other side of it is, I guess there's a place for it, right? The gotcha type of stuff. And you didn't see any of that until the hobby started turning. It's funny. We were doing NFTs last year. I know no one likes to talk about that, but I used to tell Andrew, and he was like, oh, just buy this. It's going to go up. Buy this. This is a blue chip. Buy this and just hold it. Be a collector, And I'm like, no, these things, there's no blue chips. None of these things are more than like a day old, So, and I used to tell, he's like, yeah, but look at the community they're building. And I said, yes, these communities are great because they've all known nothing but prosperity. Anyone who's in it is up. Once they face a little bit of adversity and the going is not as good, right? Once there's a little bit of a downturn, all of a sudden you see people's true colors. And for whatever reason in the hobby, the downturn was accompanied by this different type of content that's put out there that's almost like a gotcha, like, gotcha, or look, there's a scam, or there's hanky-panky, or whatever word you want to use. And, I think, look, to some extent, there is a, there's a need for it. Because the other thing that happens in any marketplace where people stop just making money hand over fist is fraud and a lot of shenanigans. And some of these people are calling out the frauds and calling out the shenanigans. But, that's a fine line, because ultimately it does impact my prediction for what's going to happen with the hobby, which is in order for this to become what we all want it to be, in order for, our collections to continue to grow in value and or for our collections to remain relevant at the very least, right? We need new blood in the hobby. For these companies to stay, the ones that are investing their money, they need to show their seed round investors return on that money. They ultimately need to, continue to make more and more over time because they're investing in it to grow the hobby pie, as we like to say. The only way to really do that is to bring people into the hobby, bring more people in, and keep people here. And unfortunately, if you're new to the hobby and your first entry is now, and you're looking on YouTube for what to find, and the majority of the content that's being put out there are people attacking each other, people fighting with each other, people like calling out scams and shenanigans. Well, who the hell is going to want to stay around and put their money in that? Who's going to want to have to navigate the landmine of the different types of fraud that's out there? Who's going to want to navigate, this hobby argument with this person and this feud and that kind of stuff? Chris Hodge and Josh Culver Chronicles, they do a lot of good stuff with the hobby. One of the things that I like is they talk about like, look, I'm kind of a jokester, so they probably don't like a lot of what I do also, but sometimes I'm serious, right? And, they are calling for like a more serious kind of, educated type of content out there because, when you're going to invest your money in the stock market, right, you can go out there and there is no shortage of information about what stocks to buy, how to invest, how to get involved, how to buy stock, short stock, how to buy mutual funds, how to do it with very little like, oh, this guy's fighting with this guy. I mean, it's a stock market, there's probably not a cage match between like Charles Schwab and, Mr. Edward Jones, I mean, or, like
it benefits them both.
Yeah.
For everybody to be positive. That I agree with you. I say this all the time. Nobody hates collecting cards and other people that collect cards more than people who collect cards. I don't.
It's true. It's long-winded, but it's true.
Like, I don't understand it. So when we talk about people like Chris Hodge and all the people putting out content and social influencers, do you think that they have as much like sway in this hobby as like some of these people who are like, oh, these people are like what is directing the hobby this way or that way? Do you think they really have that much sway, or do you think that people are gonna like listen but do what they're gonna do anyways?
I mean, people always do what they're gonna do, but do they have sway? Some people in this hobby have significant amount of sway. They do. I mean, it's like the old E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Remember that? If you're old enough, you'll know what I'm talking about. But there are people, for good or for bad, that people listen to. I mean, Jeff Wilson is a great example, right? He's a humongous following, huge following, and I've had conversations with, potential business partners where they say, well, you have this many followers, Jeff Wilson has this many followers. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want me to go out and like get that many followers? I'm sure I can do it. Like, that's not what I'm about, not what I'm trying to do. But then they'll follow up and say, yeah, but I'll be at a show and somebody, Judge is up. They got 11 runs and he hasn't hit a home run, which is weird.
Thanks for the update, Ian.
The update, Ian. So, yeah, but I mean, people will be like at a show, like, oh, didn't you see this? Didn't you see, Jeff Wilson, video where he did this, this, and this? Sometimes it's stupid what he's doing. You know what I mean? But obviously, people are paying attention to it. He's got, a huge following. And by the same token, somebody like Card Collector 2, right? I know your daughter's a fan. Not a bad way, but she knows who he is, right? And a lot of young kids do. Because they see him, they think he's 14, and they think, wow, if that 14-year-old can do this, so can I, and, I mean, it's kind of the way it works, right? I mean, so
young.
yeah. So that's the deal, I mean, but not to buy Trey Lance, take it back from someone else. 504. I mean, listen, the proof's in the pudding on that one. We'll see. I wish him luck. I never want anybody to get injured. I hope he comes back. I hope he has a great career. The Trey Lance thing is a microcosm for the whole industry, for the whole ultra modern. It's got to a point where it's not really collecting at all. It's not even really investing. It's complete speculation. Now it's almost like scratch-off tickets at this point, So
I think one thing that you touched on that's very important to us is when you talk about new blood, the only way people are going to stick around and the way we can have an impact, it's one thing to talk about it, but if the actions don't match the words, then it's pointless. So one thing that we do is when we're at a show, we always have stuff prepared for kids, and not like garbage that would just be thrown away. Nothing bothers me more than when somebody just gives a bunch of base crap that nobody would want. No kid would look at it and be like, oh, this is cool. But to give them something of value, or when you do a deal, let the kid win the deal. Let them have a positive experience that's going to want them to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole or come back and want to do more because they had a good time. And so we're finding more and more people, the more shows that we go to, there's a lot of people that are like-minded, but there are some, for lack of a better term, some curmudgeons out there that aren't willing to, let a kid win a deal or let a deal fall apart over like $5 or talk down to somebody who's just trying to make their way.
Listen, I think it's great. I mean, especially the kids, right? Because that is, I was a hobby kid. It's funny. My brother and I used to go to card stores, and in Staten Island, we were known as the Brothers Grimm. We'd walk into the store. Like, oh, the Brothers Grimm. It's Brothers Grimm are here. We would, we had an uncanny ability of picking the pack in the box that had the good stuff in it and leaving them with a box that had nothing left to sell, to the packs and stuff. So, you got to take care of the kids because ultimately they're going to be there. But some of these damn kids have a better collection than I do. You got to watch out. Some of these kids, they'll rip your head off.
When Manny talks about, there's a kid in Michigan who's known, he's got like a pretty legit collection. Him and Manny were negotiating a deal, and I thought at first it was shtick. And Manny was getting like the sweaty palms. He was getting nervous. What should I do? And I was like, Manny, the card's worth like $500. He's trying to get it for $1,500. You should probably walk away. And he's like, well, I don't want him to be mad at me. I don't want him to beat me up. And so maybe Manny was Fat Rob to Alex.
Yeah.
There you go. See, look at that. People like the scavenger hunt you set up.
We were at a show in Chicago with Manny, and he's standing next to me. This kid, different kid, comes up and he's trying to make a deal with him for like a Josh Allen rookie that Manny had. Manny's like, the card is worth like probably $1,000, right? The kid's like trying to negotiate him down to like $700 or $600 or something. And I'm like, Manny, I lean over and Manny's like, oh, like he's like really like, I know he doesn't want to sell it for this much. It's worth more than that. And then he's like sweating. He's getting nervous. And I lean over and I whisper in his ear, like, Manny, you don't have to sell your card to this child. You don't have to do this. And
so, Manny, here's the deal. He has a huge heart. Leave him alone. But here's what you got to do, Manny. You can go to the shows, but you give your entire collection, home run, but Glaber, not yet, not Judge. Give your entire collection to Little Reckless. Give it to their daughter. All right, with instructions that she can go 10% below what's on your price on your back, and whatever she sells, you give her 5% off. That way it's 15% off, just like these guys. She gets something for it, and you don't have to have the sweat, man. You don't have to, worry about it. It's easy.
Amelia is a hustler. You want to talk about hustle mentality? That kid, she's out there. Steven's more of like I love these cards. I'm gonna look at them. I want to like only collect the guys I like. I don't care if they're valuable.
Hey, Dad, on this 1990 Mark Grace card, did you know in '89 he had 13 doubles? And it's like, did you do your homework? He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but did you know he had 13 doubles?
Yeah. He, the stats this kid remembers, it's like insane. Like he could tell you stats from some guy from like 1972 who played 2 games. And I'm like, because I pulled his card out and he's like, oh yeah, did you know that this guy actually? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I don't even know who this guy is. Like, how did you know who this guy is?
Calm down, Rain Man.
That's so funny. Listen, I'm hopeful that he is his sister's biggest cheerleader at the swim meets and all the other fun stuff that you guys got going on. So,
Before we get up out of here, 2 things.
Yep.
One, we want to thank you guys for the community that you've built, because we truly have real life friends that we've met in person, that we spend time with, that we communicate outside of cards, that we would have never met. Like if you would have told me years ago that I would have been hanging out in downtown Detroit having drinks with Tony Harley.
Yeah. That's great.
If it wasn't for you guys, that would have never happened.
Tony,
Yeah.
Bro Heyman.
All these people.
Man.
Like I know when I swing through Tampa, I'm going to go see Bro Hunks and I'm going to see the little Porsche and all that good stuff. And if it wasn't for what you've built, this wouldn't happen. And then, and also, like the content that's coming out of it as a result, like, hey, man, if Andrew and Cage can do it, and it's not a slight on you, but if they can do it, why can't we?
Yeah.
Why can't
like
we?
the Bill Walsh coaching tree, right? Like all these other coaches that came off the tree.
Exactly.
Well, you know, like that's kind of
Tide raises
awesome.
all boats.
Yeah.
And you guys are the tide, man.
Yep. And ultimately, like the cardboard is like the vehicle that gets us to these relationships. But thank you for that. And then my close would be, what kind of advice do you have that's unique and not just what you love, not that like lame, like corny stuff that everybody's like, what would you, the sage Messiah, the creator of the Kaboom Cabal, what kind of advice would you give for the people that are going to listen to this?
You know,
other than punch Fat Rob in his fat
I bought a
face.
Kaboom, actually. I own a Kaboom now, by the way. I'll unveil the Kaboom in my Christmas tree. I bought a Kaboom. So what advice? What sage advice, right? So I'll split it into two, right? Because we really are talking about two different things here: the content side, because we have a lot of people content, you guys included, and you know the collector side. I'd say on the collector side, yeah, it's always fun, collect what you love and all that other fun stuff. But I would say figure out what you are. Figure out what you want to be in the hobby, right? And it doesn't have to be labeled. Like, you don't have to call yourself an investor. You don't have to call yourself a collector. You know, I've heard people call themselves a collector, you know, or an investor collector. Or, you know, like they try to like mash the words together, you know, like one of those Collision Course Jay-Z, you know, albums, right? So just figure out what it is you want to do and then, you know, work that, right? So if you want to collect and have some fun and just buy cards and not care what the grades are and don't give a shit what anybody says about your collection because it's fun for you, great. But likewise, if you want to like be a flipper, right? And that's your thing. And you're in it not to hold these cards and put them in your grave with you, because there are some people who are like my coffin cards, right? But if you're in it because, you know, you got in this and it's fun and it's a cool way to like buy something now and sell it in a couple months. First, don't let anybody ever tell you that there's a wrong way of doing the hobby, right? Don't let anybody tell you you shouldn't be a flipper. You're ruining it. There's different strokes for different folks, man, right? So you know, but if that's going to be your way of doing it, right? Make sure you have a system. Make sure you have, you know, you're actually putting in the work, the research, because you could really get burned, as a lot of people are seeing now, especially with football, with injuries and the like. But I would say the best way to do that stuff, no matter which way you are on it, is, you know, leave a little meat on the bone. You'll be fine that way, right? It's sort of like, you know, the investment advice, right? Like, you can't time the market. Time in the market is better than timing the market. That's sort of the same with this, right? Yeah, sure, you might buy something and miss the absolute bottom, and you might sell something and miss the absolute top, but you're still doing fine. You're still making your money, and you're not going to hold it for too long, where now it's on the down, or you held it for too long and somebody got injured. You held it for too long and somebody said something stupid on TikTok or whatever it may be. You know, figure out what it is that you want to make on that card, make it, and move on to the next one if that's going to be your game. Just figure out what it is you want to do, make a plan, and then work that plan, right? That's what I would say for the hobby. And also just, you know, whatever way you want to do it, go ahead and do it. For the content stuff, and I'll just direct this to you guys, for the thick boys, right? Put your head down, put blinders on, like they do with horses. Don't look at what people in the lane to your left are doing. Don't look what people in the lane to your right are doing. Just run your race. Don't look up in the top corner and see how many people are in the live. Pay attention to the numbers, but don't let the numbers run your life. Just keep doing what you're doing, and the rest of it will come, right? There's no other way of doing it. Just be consistent. Deliver what you say you're going to deliver. If you say you're going to do it once a week, make sure you do it once a week, because people they'll hold you to that. They'll expect that from you. And if you don't deliver it, you don't get too many chances with the audience. But the important thing is just do your thing. Everything else will fall in line. Don't worry about who's watching, who's not watching, how many numbers there are, where the sponsors are, whatever it is. All that shit will fall in line. Just find your lane, stay in it, put your head down and do it.
That's some fucking mic drop of a finish there
really
from
like
Cage.
it. Yeah.
That's it. It's a deal, man.
We are so grateful that you took the time to join us this evening. This has been one of probably I don't like to say it, but it was one of my favorites of Hobby Night School that we've done in a long time. So
we knew that we didn't even have a topic. Like we were throwing around like several different topics and like what would provide tremendous value or what would be an authentic conversation. And that speaks volumes to who you are, that we could have talked about anything. And I felt like you crushed it. And so
it was really funny because I write out questions for everyone and I send them.
Yep.
And I'm like, Jeremy's like, are you writing? He's like, you don't have to send Cage questions. He doesn't need them. I'm like, I can't treat him different than anyone else. I got to send him. And then he writes me back. He's like, I didn't read these. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, this is too long. I'm not reading this.
And for listen, it's on here. This is the original cigar night right here. This was the first ever Luca Nation cigar night. These three people.
These three. So I'm gonna throw a little fun stuff out there. So I'm gonna have to start working on stuff for kids. I love that you guys always go back to that. And I have to be better at that, especially because it's got to balance out the cigars, right? Because the cigars are not for kids. And I'm gonna be doing cigar nights at events, and I'm thinking, oh, should I bring Ian to the event? And I'm like, what am I gonna do with him when I'm at the cigar night? Because he wants to smoke the cigars, and then whatever, I'm gonna get canceled. You know what I mean? So I can't have that. I can't have my 9-year-old out there smoking cigars with me. So I'm going to have to work some kid stuff in, but I'm going to tell you guys now, it's almost like, breaking news, right? We are re-upping our contracts with a lot of our partners, and what I am doing is taking less money and working in hobby events at shows. So you'll see us at more shows, coming soon to Dallas, coming soon to Chantilly, coming soon to wherever it's going to be, and we're going to be doing cigar nights there.
So ship show.
Right, so I know right now the dates and places are not set, but we're working with our partners to do an event like we had at the Hard Rock, where it's a big hobby event, and there's going to be at least 250 people at the event. But the Tigers, for our NFT holders, we're reserving 50 spots that we get to invite people who have, people from our audience, people from our community, people who are NFT holders at these different locations. That way we get to meet them, and they get to kind of meet the hobby celebrities, that were at the Hard Rock, and, so that's kind of what we're looking to do this year.
That's awesome. I love the hobby celebrities thing. I feel like you should definitely trademark that or something, because that's brilliant. And if you need help with kid stuff, you can always reach out. I do tons of kid stuff, so.
Yeah, we'll have to do. I've heard great things about the scavenger hunt. Everybody loves it.
So as we leave, what are you and Ian ripping Friday, and we are out of here?
So I have a box of Merlin Soccer at the ready, which I don't know what the hell I'm looking for, but that came in and I bought it. And I have a box of, Elite that just came out last week, I think. So I have a box of Elite to open. I still have another ETB of Lost Origins from Pokemon. We'll figure it out. The kids have like a 4-day weekend, because there's 2 days off next week, Monday, Tuesday. So I have to save something, keep them entertained with some cards. I passed on Chronicles this week. I talk about it in today's episode, which I have to post still. Sorry, I'm late, guys. But I saw a breaker today, like $325 or $350 a box for Chronicles, and then they're out there talking about it like, this is fire. Chronicles is the product of the year. Take a look at this Chronicles. This is going to be fun. It's the first time they put noir in Chronicles, and I'm like, guys, I'm at shows. Like, kids don't even want Chronicles. Like, someone offers it a trade, and they first think it's great, and then they realize it's Chronicles. It's like, I don't want this. It's Chronicles. And there's a place for it, right? Like, it should be at Target. It should be something that our kids get to open. It should be something that's retail, but not
We just got me hobby retail and retail hobby. I don't know why that keeps happening.
But
so that's
1 hour, man. We appreciate you. We think the world of you. Please continue to do what you're doing, and you have an army of people who will support you any way possible.
Well, listen, what I'll tell you is same goes here. Len Hart, welcome. Love this man. Owns a bunch bunch of tigers, those guys, and Lenhart and I are mantle guys. We talk about mantle all the time. Anybody in the chat, anyone who's in, the Too Thick community, you guys yourself, please send me a message. I don't go to sleep until I've responded to every single DM that I get that day. Like, I don't have any notifications. I guess it's good because I still have less than 3,000 followers, so it's easy to do. I guess if it continues, we'll see what the story is. But, if there's anything I can do, and you asked a question in the chat and I didn't get to it, send me a DM. I'll answer it. I answer every question. I try not to tell people what to buy, but I'll walk through something you're thinking about buying and, what I think about it and the whole deal. Like, I don't want you to, I don't want to tell you what to do. As Andrew says, we want to lead a fish to water.
You guys are ridiculous. I love it. And I appreciate all of you, or you answering all of my questions all the time. And I make a point of messaging you from mine. So, it's not Jeremy asking stupid questions.
You can ask. Jeremy can ask. I'd answer if Jeremy asked questions too. It's no big deal. There's no stupid questions, just Manny's.
Yeah. 100% true.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. Thank you again, Cage. We love you. I hope you have a good night.
Take care, everybody.